All right, good day, everyone. Welcome to AE Live. Tonight we have a special guest directly from one of aviation's most important teams, assisting aviation at nearly every corner. Now, AOPA stands for the Aircraft Owners and Pilots Association. Now, they are a member-run organization that assists with keeping our airports open when other forces want to see them get closed down. Now, they help pilots navigate the legal minefields, and they provide advice for how to keep your medical certificate safe from the FAA. They personally actually just helped me out with CAMI as well. And our guest tonight is the technical editor for AOPA Magazine and author of a recent article on rusty and dusty pilots. With that, let's welcome our guest tonight, Jill Tallman. Hi, Jill.
Hi, Bob. I'm so happy to be here.
Well, I'm really happy to have you with us. Jill, I wanted to have you on, and again, I appreciate you joining. About half of our members here at Civil Air Patrol are cadets. They're between the ages of 12 and 21. And a really good portion of them are either already in flight training or they are interested in flight training. Now, a lot of them, somebody yelled at me today for using CFI and not saying what that meant. Everybody might not know what CFI means. And so a lot of folks, when they're starting to learn or they're interested in learning how to fly, they see AOPA, but they're not really sure what that is. It's just a bunch of letters. So can you do us a favor? Can you explain what is AOPA? What does AOPA do for us as aviation? And why do we want to be a part of it?
Sure, I'd be happy to. AOPA stands, and a lot of our members call us AOPA, but that's beside the point. It stands for Aircraft Owners and Pilots Association. Now, you may hit upon the word aircraft owner and think, well, I'm not an aircraft owner and I'm not yet a pilot. Well, that's okay. We have over 300,000 members, and our members range from people who own airplanes and airline pilots to general aviation pilots like me, and student pilots, and also aviation enthusiasts. We welcome everybody.
So for students, now you guys actually have a specific magazine. Now you have several magazines. And one of the magazines that you guys promote is called Flight Training.
That's correct.
And so for those that are watching, it's this magazine here. I think this was either the most recent or one of the most recents. And I had to make sure before I show this, I had to black out my address. So people are going to know where I live. But so with this magazine specifically, what's your target audience? What's your target audience, and how would folks that are interested in student, flight training, how would they get their hands on this?
Flight Training is the only magazine aimed basically at student pilots. We have a lot of readers who are longtime pilots, and they like to read the material just to get a refresher. But we go through the nuts and bolts of flight training. We discuss maneuvers. We discuss the regs. We teach you how to, look at the weather and, make your forecasts as accurately as you can. We tell you what to expect on your check ride. We tell you how not to bust your check ride. We tell you how to be a good pilot citizen. We try to do it all. And that's available. Flight Training Magazine is available. If you are a regular AOPA member, it is available as part of your membership. If you are not a member, you can get a free 6-month membership to AOPA, and that will get you 6 issues of the magazine, plus all the other benefits of being a member of AOPA. So that includes complete access to our website, which has many, many tools for student pilots, including a flight planner, a weather tool, an airport directory. Let's see if I can share a screen for you. So what you want to do is go to www.aopa.org and www.aopa.org, and let's see here. Training and safety will take you to all of our safety topics. And then membership is where you can sign up. And like I said, there are different levels of membership, but you can get, if you've never been an AOPA member, you can get a free 6 months membership to AOPA. I highly recommend you do that.
Yeah, I'll throw that link down below as well. The other thing I noticed on there too, a lot of the listeners here, especially our younger cadets, they're getting more and more into drones, right? And I noticed, and I actually didn't know this, and it makes a lot of sense that you guys also seems like you have a drone membership program as well. So
We
that's pretty
do
exciting.
indeed. Yeah, we do have a drone membership, and it's growing all the time as drones grow in popularity.
Mhm.
We want drone pilots to be good citizens of the air as much as pilots of full-size aircraft. We want drone pilots to know how to safely enjoy their drones and not get themselves in trouble by operating in airspace that they're not supposed to be operating in, or coming too close to other aircraft. So there's also information about that membership on the website, www.aopa.org. You can also call us during business hours, Monday through Friday, and that's 1-800-USA AOPA. And any one of our customer service reps will be happy to explain all the membership options to you and talk you through it and get you all signed up. And I also want to mention, Bob, I know that a lot of your readers are not, they may not be analog readers. They may like the digital. We got you covered. We have digital versions of all of our magazines, and you can request that when you set up your membership.
I want to go back to the drone thing real quick.
Yeah.
I talked to the FAA. I talked to the FAA probably more than I probably should, but so I talked to the FAA, and one of the things they said was actually really interesting. Well, because I want to say, because you mentioned about not getting in trouble with the FAA. The FAA, at least the people I talked to, said that they look at the drone program as the Future Pilots of America program. And so, some people, like, they're taking like their 107, which is a regulation for commercial drone pilots. And a lot of those folks they're getting very similar training to what a very basic pilot would get, in aerospace and weather and things of that nature, how to read weather reports. And some of those folks, it's a really good jumping point. So if you're somebody, say, watching this or listening to this, and you are thinking about being a pilot, but you're not, you just, you don't have the money yet. I mean, let's be honest, aviation's expensive. There's no way around it. But you can afford a $150 drone, and you want to get more involved in aviation, and drone is your way into it. AOPA is a good way to help with that. And definitely, the FAA wants you to be involved as a drone pilot. So definitely take that opportunity. Now, I wanted to get specifically into your article. So you wrote a really great article, and thank you very much for taking the time to write it. And it is Rusty and Dusty Pilots. So let me show a picture here. Now, is this a picture of you?
Yes, that's a picture of me pre-COVID.
Yep.
With my, you're looking at my COVID grow out right now.
Right.
So,
So the reason why this is so important now is a lot of us that are pilots, we haven't had an opportunity to fly as much. Now, that can be aviation pilot, like professional pilots that have been furloughed. I have some folks I've talked to that I consider my friends in aviation that actually, some of them, one person worked for an airline that actually shut down. Like, it wasn't even a furlough. It was like they actually shut down the whole airline. And so they're finding themselves, with 6-7 months. So a lot of people think, we're talking about pilots like, General Aviation Pilots, they're flying 172s, and they're like, well, you can still fly a 172. That's true for general aviation, but if you're a professional airline pilot, you got furloughed, you may not have flown for 7 or 8 or 9 months.
Right.
You may be looking for a job still,
right.
Hoping to find something when we get on the other side of this COVID thing. So why did you want to write this specific article on Rusty and Dusty, and what did you find out by writing it?
So up until COVID, I had flown very regularly. I owned a Piper Cherokee 140 for the last 10 years. And I flew every week. I flew 50 to 60 hours a year. Mm-hmm. I took long trips. And I just love to get out and just fly, take off and do 3 takeoffs and landings in the pattern every week. And I knew that airplane very well. And it was like putting on a pair of old shoes. I was very comfortable in it. So I sold that airplane in 2019, and I bought a share of a Cessna 182, also here at Frederick, Maryland. I'm a 1/7 owner of a Cessna 182Q now. I wanted a bigger and faster airplane. I wanted to do more traveling. If you've ever flown in a Piper Cherokee, you know that travel really wasn't what it was designed to do. It's a fantastic trainer, and I loved having it. Very inexpensive to operate and maintain. But it took me, I took it down to Florida a couple years ago, and then to the Bahamas, and it took me 2 days to get down to Florida. And I was just like, so anyway, I sold the airplane. I got into this 182, and it got to be December, and then it went into annual, and the annual took longer than usual, and so it was out of commission for several weeks, and then COVID really hit, and now it's February, it's getting into March, and February is not, I'm in Maryland, February is not the greatest time to fly. It's still cold, it's still a lot of gloomy days. So, then February rolls by, and then it gets into March, and now COVID's locking in pretty good. And people are like, I don't know if I should fly with somebody else in the cockpit, not even just to have somebody in the right seat with me. Okay, well, let's wait and see how that pans out. So then it gets to be April, and then it gets to be May, Yeah. and all of a sudden here I am, somebody who's flown every week, has gone months without flying. And when I had the opportunity to do it, I knew I no longer was going to be comfortable just jumping in the airplane and going.
Yeah, no. So I do have a question. So you actually have you had a specific issue with your aircraft, and I think anyways, and that's that you had partial ownership. So yeah. You had to almost worry about, okay, you had to almost sanitize the airplane. You had to worry about sanitizing the airplane to some regards.
That's correct. And, at the very start of the pandemic, you could not lay your hands on Clorox wipes.
Right.
And that was the one thing that I thought, I really want to have in the hangar to clean the yoke and, and everything else that I would come in contact, and, to keep myself safe and to keep my partners safe. And you couldn't even get them, so it became another reason to just kind of keep the airplane in the hangar and not go flying.
It's really amazing to think that something that we normally pre-COVID would have thought about so simple as just Clorox wipes can ground pilots, that are worried about touching surfaces that other pilots have touched. That, listen, I stay out of politics on this show at all costs. But we know that at the very minimum, the viruses in general can be transferred by touching the same objects as other people. So, it is amazing, how when something happens, our manufacturing, I don't know if manufacturing is the right word, but our supplies of everyday objects like Clorox wipes can really shut down a large portion of an industry. So I thought that was interesting when you said you were a partial owner. I do have a question, not to bounce around too much, but that's the way I roll.
No.
I like bouncing around. So I was a little kid. I probably had one of those little bouncing balls. I would just.
Yeah, I can exactly see that.
Partial ownership. One of the questions that we have quite a bit on this show is with our student pilots is, should I buy an airplane, right? Or should I continue to rent an airplane? I think the overall thing I keep hearing all the time is roughly the 100-hour mark. If you're flying more than 100 hours, you really should own your own airplane. But for student pilots, for those that can find the partial ownership, like you said, I think you said you were 1/7. So 1/7 of one. Now 182, I would not recommend for a new pilot. It's a high performance airplane. And for those that are watching this, they're going to get sick of me hearing this. The 182, for what it's worth, for General Aviation, is my favorite airplane. I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. It takes a beating if you land hard. It's not the fastest. It doesn't carry the most weight. But it does a lot of that stuff really adequately great for the majority of the missions you put it on. And it's close enough to a 172 that you can migrate to it relatively quickly.
Oh, I couldn't agree with you more.
I love the 182. That's actually Civil Air Patrol is one of our most popular airplanes in Civil Air Patrol is the 182.
Right.
So would you recommend people, student pilots looking to either purchase outright or possibly trying to find a partial ownership?
I think it's worth exploring that avenue. It's an ownership if you get into a partnership, there's going to be insurance issues that you'll have to kind of work through, especially if both of you are student pilots or one of you is a student pilot, but your broker can help you with that. I would say, particularly if this is something that you want to make a career, you see yourself doing for the rest of your life, absolutely explore a partnership or even a flying club. Maybe you don't have to go into, be an owner, but go to get on with a flying club, and you're going to see cheaper instructional rates. You're going to see cheaper hourly rates, and you're going to make a whole new bunch of good friends. And at our website has a flying club finder for anybody who would like to look and see if there's a club in their area that's accepting new members.
Yeah, I want to add a little. I want to take what you said and add to it a little bit. Especially if you want to do this long term, even if you're just even if you only want to ever be a general aviation pilot, which is still a great thing to do. The community and people hear me talk about this all the time, but community. Whether, just finding those aviation friends, because one of the ways to share or to lower the cost of flying is to share the cost of flying. If flying by yourself can be very lonely and boring. If you put another person or two or three or four and you're doing a trip to Oshkosh, it all of a sudden becomes one of the most fun things you'll ever do in your life.
Absolutely.
And if you are going to do this professionally, it is a very small community. And so one of the best ways to find a job is through word of mouth. So if you have a great attitude and you work hard and people learn who you are and they see that you're, especially for my cadets, if you're interested in doing this, even in the military, you get that reputation around the aviation community that you are a hard worker. You're going to find that that's really one of the top ways to get where you want to go. So, and AOPA, I think, does a great job of helping facilitate that. Again, because AOPA is a member. It is not, it's not some like corporation, evil corporation that wants your money. This is really a member-driven organization. So
we are, and so many people in our organization, well, everybody in our organization is passionate about our mission. And so many of us are pilots and aircraft owners, and we live and breathe this stuff. And, we just want to make it available for everybody.
Yep. Now going on to another question, going back to your article. So what were some of the things that you found started lacking? So if somebody hasn't been flying for a few months, I didn't fly for a long time. So somebody didn't fly for a few months or even longer. What were some of the skills that folks really need to watch out for? Maybe even, hook back up with a CFI or a certified flight instructor, to try to dust off some of those skills. What do you recommend?
Oh, absolutely. If you have any inkling that you might be uncomfortable, you want to find a flight instructor. There's no shame in that game. I mean, they're just there to, I call it, I call up my friend, Brenda Tibbs, and I say, I need you to babysit me. And she knows what that means. So, you want to make sure that you're following your checklist. For one thing, that was something that I was like, I wasn't following a checklist. I was trying to do things from memory. That's not good. So I was bad on that. The 182 has the manifold pressure. Mm-hmm. And I had to kind of go through the different RPM and manifold pressure settings again, because it's not like when you just get into a fixed pitch prop and just, shove the throttle forward and away you go. So I had to work through those settings again. I also had to remind myself how the 182 lands differently than the Cherokee. And you can't have Piper feet on a 182. And I also, my radio technique, which is a crapshoot at any time, was off. You know, and that was kind of surprising to me. So.
Yeah, I was talking with Jill prior to starting, and I was relaying to Jill that I was amazed at how fast the communication skill set went away. You know, it was like you get on the radio, it's like you forget how to talk, and it's like you get the air traffic controllers, they start talking at you real fast, and you're like, wait a minute. You almost started feeling a student pilot again, learning how to talk.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was so bad. I thought, well, I bet these controllers are having a good old time listening to this.
Yeah, you're a couple $1,000-hour pilot, and they're in the control tower going, well, we got to be careful with this one. We got a student pilot on a solo. So now with student training, so you guys also do a really nice job of trying to help folks, learn how to get the most out of their flight training. What do you guys, what's some of the major recommendations? Let's say I've got a student pilot, one of my cadets who's 16, and he or she wants to go learn how to fly, and mom and dad are, they say, yep, we'll pony up the cash. So what's one of the recommendations that you would have? I'm actually going to do a twofold question to this. I've never asked a second question before. The first question is, what recommendations do you have for that new young student pilot? Maybe not, maybe not an adult, but somebody younger. And then second, what recommendations do you have for their parents?
Okay. Well, for young people, I'm so jealous of young people getting into flying because they have eye-hand coordination that I and many people in my generation don't have because we didn't grow up with video games. Mm-hmm. So they're coming out of the gate. Their eye-hand coordination skills are much better. And so they've already got a jump start. I would say that when young people are learning to fly, the way that you can, continue to make progress and to get ahead is to always review what you've learned after each lesson with your flight instructor, and then when you set up your next lesson, ask your flight instructor, what are we going to do? How do I prepare for it? And then do the prep work. Be prepared to do all that stuff. If you come prepared, you're going to be a dream student. You're making your flight instructor so happy, and you are going to progress faster. If you can fly more often than once a week, if you have it within your budget and your time to fly 2 to 3 times a week, that's even better because you won't have a chance to, things won't go stale on you. So if you have that opportunity, it doesn't always work out sometimes with weather and with our, and especially high school students, they have so many other ththings they've got to do. But if you can make it work, fly 2 or 3 times a week, you're going to progress like lightning. As you asked me about the parents of students.
Yeah, the parents of the younger pilots.
First of all, I would just like to say to parents of younger pilots, thank you for allowing your child to get into an airplane with somebody you don't really know. Mm-hmm. And if I have 2 children, and I know what that's like. The thing I want you to remember is that flight instruction is one of the safest forms of general aviation flying. Your flight instructor is not going to let anything happen to your child. He or she does not want anything to happen to your child. I want parents to also understand that general aviation airplanes are maintained to a higher standard than our cars are. So they don't just fall apart in the sky while we're flying them. General aviation airplanes are maintained to a rigid schedule, especially those that are rented to flight schools that flight schools rent out. They're maintained on a very specific schedule, and they're usually always in good shape. And then the other thing I would like to tell parents is that little airplanes just don't fall out of the sky.
Right.
When we have engine failures or things like that, the airplane glides, and student pilots are trained how to land airplanes in those circumstances. It is not a situation where, the engine cuts out
You
and
just fall.
our hands go up and that's the end of it.
Yep.
No, we spend a lot of time training for that eventuality. And because, it hasn't happened to me, knock wood, but I know a lot of pilots that it has happened to, and they land off airport and it's not with the proper training, it's not a big deal.
Yeah, you see the bush pilots, they hardly ever land at an airport.
Exactly.
They're always landing off airport.
Exactly.
And the other thing I thought that, it's really interesting. I love Carrie Underwood. I love country music, right? But she has a song, Jesus Take the Wheel, right? Where that's not aviation. Right?
No.
Emergency operations is a very large part of aviation training. And the other thing that I would say for parents, and even for anybody interested or nervous about flying, is if you're landing an airplane, even without the engine running, those airplanes, they stay in the air perfectly fine, at 50 to 60 miles an hour.
Right.
In our case, about 40, we say knots, right? So 40 to 50 knots. So, about 50 to 60 miles an hour. So when you're driving to the airport and you're going 65, 70 miles an hour, you're actually traveling faster than what the airplane would be touching down at if you lost your engine and had to glide. So
exactly.
And nobody freaks out when they're driving on the throughway surrounded by tons of other cars.
Right. I do a little.
Yeah. Especially depending on some of these drivers out there nowadays. But unfortunately, COVID didn't keep some of the whack jobs home. But
yeah, exactly.
But anyway, so I think that's really important. There was another question I had on that. Oh, what was it now? Oh, I remember what it was. You were talking about flying. I actually had one question for you and one comment, I guess. So
Sure.
The question I had was, do you recommend that students do their ground school prior to starting actual hands-on flying lesson?
Okay, so that's a tough one. And it really depends on what kind of a learner you are. There are visual learners. These people need to see everything before they can do it. They need to have it demonstrated. There are, I can't, off the top of my head, I can't think of the other two categories, but there are people who don't need to see everything. You can explain it to them and they get it. And then there are people who are kind of like in the middle somewhere. So if you have an understanding about what your learning style is, that'll help you to determine whether you should do ground school before you actually start flying. I think that for me, I'm a visual learner, and doing ground school concurrent with my flight instruction was very helpful. But other people have done ground, they don't have the means to start flying, but they want to get the ground instruction out of the way, and that's fine. I'm all for that. If you want to, if you dive in and you're getting it, and it's sinking in, and you even want to knock out the knowledge test before you start your flight instruction or whatever, that's fine. It's whatever works for your learning style.
Yeah, I think that's good. And I think the other thing you said too was important, right? We all have different learning styles. So if you are somebody, you want to knock it out and you try and you're struggling, don't let that make you think that you can't become a pilot, that you're struggling with that ground school. You just may not be able to learn in that format. And then when you get into the airplane, everything that you saw that was making your brain smoke all of a sudden starts making a lot of sense, because
absolutely.
And that's not a deficiency on you as a pilot. That's just how you learn. And we all learn differently. And so you're going to find that skill will help you in ways that, say, the visual or the somebody that maybe reads it, you're going to have different strengths. So and the other comment I kind of wanted to make, I always try to make sure I talk too much. Like if you ever talk to my wife, she'll tell you I talk too much. So, and I listen to these podcasts and these shows and I go, man, why am I talking so much? But I will say one thing that's important is that if you are somebody you can only fly, say, once a week, and going back to your point, Jill, about, trying to get understanding for what your next lesson is, the flight simulators have become so good now, right? It's not a substitute. Well, sometimes, depending on your flying, the FAA actually will allow it if it's a certified flight instructor.
That's correct.
But we have what's called chair flying. Or I call it chair flying. And so if you're a student pilot and somebody says, hey, we're going to go work on turns around a point and we're going to work on touch and goes, you can do that in a flight simulator. Now, it's not going to be the same. You're not going to have the seat of pants, and all that stuff, but you can get your flows. You can work on your emergency procedures, your flows for emergency procedures. You can work on all your V speeds, and you can drive your family crazy. You can put up on atclive.net, and you can tune in your local airport, and you can hear people talking about how the air traffic controllers talk, and how the pilots respond. These are all things you can do for the comfort of your own home. So
Yes.
so that if you can't fly more than once, that is a way to help get yourself ready and do that homework for your next lesson. So I think that's
Yes.
really cool.
Excellent points.
Now AOPA, I want to kind of go back to some of the AOPA stuff. So
Sure.
AOPA, one of the things that you guys, I want you to talk a little bit about for us is how you guys are helping to keep airports open. I'm not sure if that's something that you specifically work on or if you have a lot of knowledge on, but it's something that's super important for our for flying.
Yes, we have an advocacy department that works at the state and local and national levels to keep airports open. And that's a very big part of what AOPA is charged with doing for its members, is to keep access to these airports. There are so many airports that serve parts of the country that a major metropolitan airport just doesn't. And it's vital to keep these airports open so that they can get emergency medical equipment and all kinds of stuff. In Alaska, where almost everybody is a pilot, it's critical to have places for them to be able to land. Because there's so much general aviation in Alaska, because there are no roads. There are not no roads, but there are not as many roads. It's just very hard to get from point A to point B in a four-wheel vehicle. So it's a huge part of what we do at AOPA.
I've talked to so many people in the last couple of months, and almost every single one of them, their bucket list is always flying in Alaska. So I think what we need to do, and I think AOPA should help with this, and I'll help organize, is I think we should have a fly-in to Alaska. And then all of us meet up in Seattle, and we all take out little airplanes and we fly up to Alaska.
Hey, sign me up. I actually did fly in Alaska several years ago. I had an opportunity. I was in not Anchorage, not Juneau. I was in Juneau, and I was on a cruise. Mm-hmm. And obviously, this is way pre-COVID. And I thought, I'm going to take my logbook. I'm going to see if there's any flight instructors in Juneau, because we're going to spend like 2 days there, and I'm going to see if I can find one and fly around. And indeed I did. He picked me up in downtown Juneau and took me out to the airport. He had a Texas tail dragger, which is a Cessna 150 tailwheel version. And we just flew around for an hour. He took me to a couple of gravel strips. We didn't land, but we flew very close to them. It was amazing. It was unlike any other flying I've done in my life. The scenery was unbelievable. And I want to say he charged me like $50.
Oh, wow.
So,
you didn't cover the cost of the fuel. So.
Well, that was his hourly rate, and then I had some, I didn't have to spend too much on his airplane. So, it was really amazing. You have people who go to Alaska and they do charter flights, and they're hundreds and hundreds of dollars. That's great too, but this was to me far superior.
Now, what is on a personal level, what's on your bucket list you haven't done yet for aviation? Where would you like to go, or what would you like to do?
Oh, okay. So, it's funny you should ask, because right before you and I started chatting, I was watching the Alton Bay, New Hampshire feed on Facebook. Alton Bay is the only charted ice runway in the lower 48 states.
Oh, cool. I'll check it out.
This is up in New Hampshire. And right now, last year it was way warm and they never got ice thick enough for airplanes to land. But this year, they're already at 10 inches. They like to be at 12 inches. And I'm thinking that I might grab somebody and fly myself up to New Hampshire and land on an ice runway.
Oh, that is cool. Now, do they use special tires, or I mean, do you use a standard aviation tire, or?
Anybody goes in. Now, you need to be on your game.
Yeah. Imagine with a tail wheel too.
You can't just go, traipsing in there and hope for the best. And they do have you look on YouTube, you'll see some videos of people who were not on their game. Let's just put it that way. I'm not gonna, there before the grace of God go I.
Yeah, right. We all have our moments.
If they're pilots, and I know a couple pilots who've flown in there, and they say if you're on your game and you know what to expect and your airspeeds are good, the important thing is you're not going to hit the brakes on a nice runway.
That's true.
It's about 2,300 feet.
Okay. That's not really long though when you think about you're on ice. I could just imagine. Actually, so that's Alton Bay, New Hampshire. So
correct.
All right, I'm gonna go look that up because I want to see some people with tail wheels in the wind land on that thing. I would imagine that there's not much of a crosswind, component. They probably shut that thing down pretty quick if there's a crosswind.
I think so. I think mostly the wind is out of the north when you land up there.
Okay, all right. Yeah, I can just if I try landing it, I'd probably look like one of those figure skaters doing a spin.
No. Come on.
Yeah, I was talking to Amy Hoover and Dick Williams. They're famous for mountain flying, and so I was talking to them last week, and we were talking about tail wheels and and wind wind vaning and all that fun stuff. I can only imagine that in on ice. We'll be the first people to put what do they call them on? I used to live in New York, in Rochester, New York, so we're familiar with snow and ice.
Yeah. So have you flown on skis?
I have not. And I really want to. So there's a bunch of bucket list items, but my number one is I definitely want to fly Alaska. But I feel like if I'm going to fly Alaska, I should also learn how to fly on a ski. But I'll probably stick initially to just landing on pavement.
Okay.
But that sounds really fun. So all right, so that's your bucket list, is the land on ice.
Yes.
All right. I can be fair and honest. I've never ever heard a pilot say that their bucket list item was to land on ice. So that's really good.
Well, I'm blessed because I work for AOPA, and a lot of people have gone to the Bahamas on their bucket list. Mm-hmm. Been there and done that twice. Going to Oshkosh, flown myself 3 times.
Yep.
So.
Now, are you planning on? Now, you probably don't have. You might have information. I don't know if you can share it with us. Are they looking at Oshkosh this year? Or are we thinking we're going to be back into it? Or
I've got my ear to the ground, and the latest I heard was that a decision might be made May 1st.
Okay.
But your guess is as good as mine.
Okay.
It's just it always has to do with keeping. We've had to push back our own events for 2021
sure.
because of the fact of COVID vaccination distribution has not gone as swiftly as we would have liked.
Right.
And it's EA. It's a huge event. EAA is just going to have to make that decision.
Yeah, we're looking forward to it. I hope. For those, actually, you know what? Let's do this, because a lot of I have to remind myself that half of our listeners are going to be kids, and they probably don't know what Oshkosh is. Now, that being said, our Civil Air Patrol kids may have a better chance of knowing Oshkosh is because we have an encampment there. But for those that are listening that don't know what Oshkosh is, how would you explain Oshkosh?
Oshkosh, well, its real name is EAA AirVenture, and it is a 7-day airplane party with 700,000 people. You are immersed in airplanes all day, every day. You're with your people.
Right.
It's just a wonderful event, and there's tons of things for young people to do. Mm-hmm. There's, Ford is there. They come in with stuff, every kind of airplane you can imagine. The stuff that Oshkosh will have historic airplanes and warbirds, but they will also have mock-ups of what's new and big and coming down the pike. Last year, well, not last year because we didn't have it. They didn't have it, but 2019, there were tons of mock-ups of these, airplanes that are going to be unmanned and carrying people. And they have a name that's escaping me at the moment. But they're, it's a lot of people are putting a lot of money into this. So, that's very interesting.
Yeah, the two things on that. Number one, we talk about student pilots, right? Folks that are learning to fly, one thing I want you to understand is that General Aviation Pilot's license, that is your ticket to so many incredible things that people just on this planet don't get to do ever. Mankind has only been flying for a little over 100 years. And, so in the grand scheme of things, it's barely a blink of an eye. And, if you are lucky enough to actually get yourself into an airplane, even for the, 7 or 8 billion people that live on this world today, a very small percentage of that 7 or 8 billion have been in an airplane, let alone being able to fly an airplane. And so things like Oshkosh, things like, I know we just had Sun and Fun down here in Florida. They canceled the initial Sun and Fun and they kind of did like a little impromptu one. But Oshkosh, being able to take, for our kids, our cadets, if you've got a boyfriend or girlfriend, and you say, hey, I'm going to take you to New York City for dinner. Right. Man, it's hard to compete up against that if you're on the dating game.
I've known people who have gone to concert. I took my son to see Aerosmith in a General Aviation airplane. I've known other people who've flown to concerts. I know people who fly to, they go to spring training, for Major League Baseball, the spring training cities, and follow their teams, or they'll go to city to go to the different ballparks. You can incorporate general aviation into almost every aspect of what you're already interested in, and it makes it better,
Yep. Now, I know, and not to elaborate on Oshkosh, but one thing I just want to add, because I know it's EAA, but Oshkosh, again, it's all one big community, right? Civil Air Patrol, AOPA, EAA, we have different areas that we work in, but we are one community.
Yes.
And so with Oshkosh, I'll tell you one of the coolest things I did, and no, you just can't do this unless you're a pilot. So one year I flew in a 172. So now just so you don't know me. So one of the things I love about your last name is Tallman, right? So is it Tallman or Tallman? How do you say your last name?
It's Tallman.
Tallman. So I am a Tallman. So I am 6'8". So
dear Lord, you are a Tallman.
Right. I feel like I should be able to come to your holiday parties just by the fact that I'm 6'8". I should be able to blend in with the Tallman family. But I'm 6'8" and I'm about 290 pounds. So I am not a small man. And I had my uncle, we went to Oshkosh together. My uncle is not that much smaller than me. And so we were in a 172. And for folks that don't know, a 172 is not that wide of an airplane. It's a fairly narrow airplane. And so I was the pilot. I had to fly with my right arm around his back, and he was using his left hand to control the fuel, but the throttle. But anyways, we miscommunicated, and it was the most miserable night of my life, and it was followed up by the most amazing morning of my life. We miscommunicated on who was bringing the tent and who was bringing sleeping bags. And I had nothing to sleep in. So I tried throwing on some extra clothes, and it got so cold. I ended up going into the airplane, trying to sleep inside of an airplane, which isn't comfortable, especially 172. And so anyways, I couldn't sleep all night long. Now the sun's coming up. It's August. So the sun's coming up. It's like almost 6 o'clock, I think, give or take, in the morning. And I'm the only person up. Now when you fly into Oshkosh, you're inside the fence. So there's no security. If there is, there's not much. So I'm up and I'm just walking around, and there's nobody up yet. The sun is, and I want to paint the picture here. The sun is rising, and I'm over in the World War II area, and I'm in row after row after row of World War II fighters, including P-51s with all the chrome.
Right.
And the sun was rising and the sunrise was shining onto the P-51s, and just, you couldn't see any other airplanes. You couldn't see that you were in, it was as close as you could possibly feel to if you woke up in the middle of a World War II, fighter base during World War II. There was no visible, there was nobody else there that wasn't World War II airplanes.
Right.
And there was nobody there with me. And it was just the most awe-inspiring thing. And again, for those of you that, again, not to be long-winded about that, because I know I talk too much, but for those of you that are interested in learning how to fly, that pilot's license is what gets you the ticket to do those things.
Mm-hmm.
If you were somebody that came that day in a car and wanted to see the air show, you weren't going to be there at 6 o'clock in the morning during the sunrise by yourself with those airplanes. So,
right.
So anyway, sorry, I just wanted to tell the story real quick, but
Yeah, of course.
so now what is now AOPA? One of the things I think is really important for folks to understand about AOPA is that if you're having a problem with the FAA, you may call or write to them, and they may not answer the phone. Likely they won't, especially if you're calling Cami. But AOPA does an incredible job, and I'm hoping I'm going to have somebody on from your medical division at some point. But
that'd be awesome. I can't say enough about our medical certification team. They have their own fan club.
Mm-hmm.
At the air shows and Sun and Fun and Oshkosh. They'll be there, and they'll have these pilots come up and say, "Hey, I love you. You keep, you saved my medical and everything." And it's because they work so hard for folks.
Yeah, they're really incredible. And you have a phone number to call, and you have an advocate to help you through the system. And the FAA, I love the people at the FAA. They're just not funded enough, and their team is too small. And so they can take a really long time to get back to you on things. And whereas, AOPA, they're there, I remember talking with one person. He said, listen, he goes, we want you all to be members. He goes, but if you just had a quick question, you may, we want you to be members long-term. So, we might be able to help you answer a quick question, even if you're not a member, in the hopes that you become a member.
Right.
So one thing on, you mentioned where we talked about the medicals, and I want to ask you about, I think you had a trip with John and Martha King. We actually had a video with John and Martha just a couple of weeks ago. And John, specifically John and myself, we both had issues with CAMI, which is, for those folks that don't know, that's the group in the FAA that deals with the medicals. And both, John had a thing with him, and I had taken a medication that I didn't know was on the FAA no-go list. And that caused me quite a bit of hassle.
I can only imagine.
Yeah, it was about 4.5 months, and it was for something really silly. But anyways, that's where AOPA can really help you out. And also, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, our team of medical certification specialists, this is all they do all day, every day. And they know the regs, they know the rules, and they have contacts within the FAA. I feel like they work magic, because they can make a call and get a response sometimes, not all the time, but a lot of times. But they do know their stuff, and I would encourage. What we're seeing a lot with young student pilots is previous diagnoses of ADD.
Oh, okay.
And if that is a concern, I urge you to call AOPA and talk to somebody there before you go in to get your medical certificate. They will walk you through the hoops that you're going to have to jump. Unfortunately, if you have a diagnosis of ADD or a previous diagnosis, there are going to be hoops that you've got to go through to get that medical. But they will walk you through that, tell you what to expect.
Yeah, and also for those of us a little bit older, and as well as some younger folks, if you have diabetes, that is another one that you should call AOPA, have them walk you through it. If you go to your AME, your Airman Medical Examiner, if you go to your air doctor first, and you put something on a form that's sent to the FAA, you're kind of locked in on that answer. And AOPA will really help. The other thing, I'm going to put a link in our video description, because AOPA from a medical perspective also has a list. They do, frankly, you guys do a better job than the government for having easily readable lists of the medications, and so if you're a pilot or if you're going to be working on your student pilot, you want to understand what medications you're on, prior to telling the FAA what medications you're on.
Exactly. So, and it's important also to check whatever over-the-counter medications you may be taking. The FAA has opinions about those as well. You may be like, for example, something like Benadryl that you might take because you had an allergy or you had, sinus infection. You have to wait. There's a waiting period before you can get back in an airplane after you've taken Benadryl. So you need to check that.
Yeah, absolutely. So those are all really important things. So I'm going to put a link to that down below. Now, Jill, you had mentioned in our talk before we started that you had taken a special flight with John and Martha. So what was that all about?
Well, I was saying, you said you've had John and Martha on your show, and I said that they're a very tough act to follow in terms of entertainment and knowledge and everything else. And it reminded me that I had the pleasure and the unique opportunity to fly with John and Martha. I want to say this was 10 to 15 years ago. We were going to go to the Women in Aviation Conference, which was to be held in Cincinnati at that time. And John and Martha came to AOPA, and they gave myself and another AOPA colleague a ride. At the time, they had a Falcon jet. I don't believe they have that anymore. I think they might have a Citation jet.
I think a Citation.
But at the time, they had a Falcon jet. And so we got a private jet ride from John and Martha to Cincinnati in the Falcon jet. So that was one thing. It's like a private jet ride to Cincinnati with John and Martha.
John and Martha.
I know. And then the second thing was that the first leg, the one leg from Frederick, Maryland to Cincinnati, Ohio, Martha flew. And John sat in the right seat. Martha was pilot in command, but John sat in the right seat, and he did the radios and he did the navigation and stuff. And it was it was clear when we left Frederick, but it got pretty hard IFR by the time that we landed in Cincinnati. And Martha handled that Falcon jet like a champ. I mean, she knows her stuff. And I later found out that they do that. They deliberately had Martha fly that leg for a reason. They do that with people that have never flown with them before, because they want people to know I don't know if they want people to know, but they want to show that Martha is an awesome pilot. And, and so the next leg they would switch, and John would be, pilot in command, and she would do the radios. But for that trip, since they had never flown with us, they wanted, it was Martha. It was Martha as PIC, which I think is amazing. I just think they're an amazing couple. So.
Yeah, we had John is always the first person whenever he's talking to people about flying with Martha, he always says she's just a little bit better than him. But he's always clear to give her that credit. And I know I'm going to do the whole YouTuber thing here, right? So I got to see which side am I pointing on. Let's see. I got to point this way. No, other way. So I'm going to put a link up here to that video with John and Martha, because one of the things, and you might be interested in hearing about this too, John, I asked, I had gotten some questions from some people in different forums to ask John and Martha. And one of the questions I thought was kind of a throwaway question and kind of a joke question. And it was honestly the best answered question that they did the whole interview. And that was, how do you get along with flying with your spouse? And at first I thought that was just a joke. And they had very real opinions and ways of making sure that they fly together in such a way that they support each other. And, it's not, well, hey, you're above the glide slope. You're below the glide slope. What are you doing? Right. It doesn't come off like that. Because all of us that are married, I know our kids that are listening, they're like, oh, married people, But, married people, even if we love each other, we can get on each other's nerves sometimes. And when you get into high stress situations, which you can get into an airplane, sometimes, that can come out a little bit. And they had I think he spent about 15 minutes, both of them, talking about, flying with your spouse. And to be honest with you, that may be a wonderful article for AOPA. It was really a fantastic conversation. I just didn't expect it all.
Well, when you consider they've made a career of flying with each other, you know, they've got it down. They've got it down pat. So it
Yeah.
doesn't surprise me at all. But you know, I have heard of people, you know, the husband learned to fly first, and then the wife did, and they get into the cockpit together for the first time. And she's allegedly piloting command, and all of a sudden he's barking and saying my controls and this and that and the other. And you know, you have to work it out ahead of time. Everybody has to have a job. So
Yeah, one thing, I'm not gonna say who says this because I'll get in trouble with that group, but there's been some studies done, and I'm sorry guys, they say the women are really, really good pilots, even compared to us guys. So
they are.
women. So I know we have the macho attitudes sometimes in these airplanes, but these women are really awesome pilots. And I really promote women in aviation. I have two girls myself, and I'm taking one of them on a flight, actually both of them on pretty long distance cross country flights here in a couple of months. And they're both excited. And I've had them flying since they were 4 or 5 years old in the airplane.
Oh, that's awesome. And thank you for doing that. I tell women all the time that flying is the best thing you can do for yourself, because it'll give you confidence in ways you can hardly imagine. I started learning to fly when I was 40. I was not a young person. And so it took me a little bit longer to get things. And once I realized that, you know, I'm not a spring chicken, I'm not going to get this right away, I gave myself a break, and I continued to plow on through, and I was able to finish up. And I tell women, you know, but at the same time, so I'm learning to fly, and around the same time, I started training to get a black belt in Taekwondo.
Yay!
And I never would have done that if it hadn't been for the fact that I was learning to fly an airplane at the time, because you know, it really puts things into for a lot of women, it puts things into perspective. You know, you know, if you're scared about talking in front of people, or if you're scared about this or you're scared about that, all you got to remember is that I can fly an airplane.
Right.
I can do this. I can talk to a group of people at the PTA, and I can drive by myself across the country, and you know, everything else just kind of shrinks in relevance. So
Yeah, I'm not sure if you know who this is. Again, I'll do the YouTuber thing, you know, the link, the other way. I'll put a link up here. Cecilia Aragon, does that name sound familiar to you? Cecilia Aragon?
No, but you know, if I see her face, maybe I might know.
So Cecilia Aragon is the first Latina pilot on the U.S. aerobatics team. And she got all the way to being ranked 4th in women in the entire world, and ranked also 4th, men or women, on the U.S. team. And so we had a really nice long conversation about women in aviation. And she had talked, the same thing you just said, about, you know, she was really shy, and, you know, can I do different things? And aviation was that light switch for her. Where she got into an airplane, and, you know, even, and I hate to say it, you know, there is still some men in aviation that are jerks, you know, I don't know, another nice way of saying it. And she had to fight a little bit.
You said it, I didn't.
Right. And so, you know, she had to fight a little bit through that. But listen, she's a 4th ranked U.S., you know, aerobatics pilot in the, you know, and so let alone the first, you know, Latina pilot. And so, you know, just so again, we go back to the question about the parents, right? So if you're a parent listening to this with your student pilot, if you're a younger student pilot, or if you're a woman, you know, I don't care if you're 50 years old and you want to get into aviation, don't let anybody tell you that you can't do it. You know, if that's something you want to do, go for it.
It's never too late to learn. We get people who are in their 60s and 70s learning to fly, and like I said previously, people who are learning to fly and who are a little bit older, they actually make very good student pilots, because they're cautious, and they know the risks involved, and they apply themselves really well. They're not real frivolous. It will take older people a little bit longer, and you have to recognize that, and you have to say it's okay. Bob, we talk about How many hours did it take for you to solo? How many hours did you have when you got your check ride?
Yeah, like it's a competition.
Yeah. Did you have 40? Did you have 41? You know, you're only competing against yourself. You're only competing against yourself. You know, you're not competing with anybody else. And it doesn't matter that the kid in your class soloed with 9.5 hours and it took you 15.
Right.
It doesn't matter. You both are going to get a pilot certificate.
Right. It doesn't,
like
you don't need a different colored one based on how many hours for your solo.
Right. And yeah, taking longer is going to have a little bit of more of an impact on your wallet. But at the, you know, you just have to deal with that fact and know in the long run that you're going to be as safe as you can possibly be when you're ready to take your check ride, when you solo.
And it always drives me crazy when people are like, oh, I got done, say 60 hours, just to throw a number out. Right. And they, people say, well, I want to save money, so I want to be done by 60 hours. I want those people to understand, especially if you're one of those people listening to this, when you get done and get your pilot's license, flying doesn't become free. So if you're going to keep flying after you get your pilot's license, when you get to 80 hours, you just spent the same amount of money for the most part as the other person who took 80 hours to get their pilot's license. They may have some extra time with an instructor, but enjoy that time. Soak it up. I mean, you can have just as much fun flying as a student pilot as, somebody who's got their pilot's license and flying. So really enjoy that time. It's just, it doesn't matter. I think it's a good point. So, So Jill, is there anything that you wanted to add? I see that I've kind of kept you a little long, but is there anything you wanted to add to anybody that's listening?
Oh, I just want to give a shout out to all the CAP cadets. We've had CAP cadets come and work at our air shows and events, and they are so disciplined, and I'm so proud of them when they come out. They do what they're asked to do, and they do it well. And I think that CAP is a great organization. And I hope that everybody gets the chance to fly. And again, www.aopa.org, 1-800-USA-AOPA. Call with your questions. You don't have to be a member. It helps if you're a member.
Right. We would like you to be a member.
We want you to be a member, but you know what? Call or, go on the website. And we would love to help you reach your aviation goal, whether that be to fly for fun or to fly professionally or to fly a drone or to volunteer for Civil Air Patrol. We would love to help you get there.
Awesome. Well, Jill, like I said before, we are all part of one larger community. We have kind of our little side things that we do in the community. But, as a member of CAP, I want to thank you for everything that you do personally, as well as everything that the folks at AOPA do. I personally had an airport near Buffalo, New York, that people bought houses near an active airport and then started to complain about the fact that there's airplanes flying at an airport that they bought a house at when the airport was already there. And AOPA had to really come in, and we kept the airport. And it was really through the help of AOPA as well as some other organizations that really allowed for that. And so really, on a personal level, thank you to everybody at AOPA for everything that you guys do.
Well, we're happy to help. I'm glad we were able to help in that instance.
Sounds great. All right, Jill. Well, if nothing else, I think that we are done here. And then we'll just talk to you soon. I hope to meet you sometime if you go to Oshkosh. I'm a big believer, like I said, in community. So hopefully sometime, I'll get to meet you at an Oshkosh or an AirVenture or a Sun and Fun, or who knows what we're going to have. So
count on it. Things are going to open back up and we'll get a chance to meet.
Hopefully in a couple of months. So, all right, Jill, thank you so much. I hope you have a great day.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right. So what I'm going to do, Jill, is I'm going to go do the outro, and then I'll be right back and I'll say goodbye formally. So,
okay.
All right. I'll be right back. All right, everybody. That was our conversation with Jill Tallman. Actually, let me say it again. I said your last name wrong. I said Tillman, not Tallman. All right, everybody. That was our conversation with Jill Tallman from AOPA. Again, she's one of the technical editors for the AOP magazines. If you haven't already, please go ahead and check out the AOP website. I'm going to put a link to that down below. They are an incredibly important organization and resource, frankly, for all of us inside of aviation. They really, without them, a lot of airports wouldn't exist. Without them, a lot of pilots, they would be grounded because they wouldn't have their medical certificates. And without them, we would have a lot of student pilots who wouldn't, who just need that little bit extra push and motivation to get their certificates. So they really do a fantastic job, and it's really a worthwhile organization for you to become involved in. With that, again, my name is Bob Roberts, Aerospace Education Officer here with Civil Air Patrol. If you wanted to find us in other social media platforms on the podcast, if you want to listen to this as opposed to watching it, you can go to Aerospace-Live, search for that, and you'll find our podcast. If you want to go and follow us on Twitter, we have a brand new Twitter account. I think we have like 9 followers. We're really excited about our 9 followers. That's Aerospace_Live. And we'll promote the new shows that we're doing there. And then if you want to follow us on YouTube, you can go to my personal YouTube channel, which is kind of like a weird offshoot for Civil Air Patrol, and that's /Robert Roberts. And we have our guest interviews as well as our aerospace lessons here. So with that, I hope you all had a great time, and we will talk to you soon. Bye, everyone. Hey, I hope you've enjoyed that video. If you did, please do me a favor, hit that like button, hit the subscribe button if you want to see more content. Up here on the left-hand side, you're going to see another video from our this playlist. And if you click down here, you're going to see another video on our channel. Hope you guys all have a great day. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.